बजे पे सामने देखना, ठीक है?
Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. I am your host Hajra Satti and joining me is my wonderful co-host Shehzad Khan. Assalamu alaikum Shehzad, how are you doing today?
Walaikum assalam, ji ayanu, pakhair agale, ni hao, churashumme, washmale, hola, boyor, privyet, kaifa hal, hale shuma chatore, ahlan wasahlan, marhaba, buna, mucho, gracias, swabi, balli kare aya, hosh galde nanayo, sayo, huy amora, chi vato, chi hal, yud, kalimera, and Hajra, thank you so much. I'm doing wonderfully well, and for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, we hope and pray that you're ready to kickstart your blessed Friday with us. But while we're at it, Hajra, I would want to ask you, so the weather, all of a sudden have taken a U-turn. And imagine just yesterday, I could feel that as if, God forbid, if I'm not going to wear a jacket, I can actually suffer from temperature.
Yes.
What was your thought about the weather yesterday and today?
Okay, so I landed from the Istanbul, and before I went to Istanbul, I felt that the weather was also the same. It was not very hot, but I do feel from your this assertion is that weather might be become a little bit hotter when I left the Islamabad. But having said so, I just feel that the weather is in the perfect continuity when I left. Having said so, Shehzad, I do feel that you feel really incomplete with the bundle of your salams and welcomes, and you can't really detach from yourself from that very generous sort of introduction.
Yeah. I think it's Hajra, it's probably the first time, and while obviously our producer told us that we are about to go on air, so I was having this little piece of conversation with a worthy guest over here inside the studio. So it was Hajra who was actually very careful about whether what time we're going to go on air. So all of a sudden when she saw the red light on the camera, she was like, hello, assalamu alaikum, and I think that you've done a fabulous job. And while you started with your intro, I was like, okay, how do I come back with all my salams? So I think we've done a great job, ladies and gentlemen. We hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well, that you're ready to kickstart your day with us. It happens to be a blessed Friday. Please make sure that you remember us, our entire team, and everybody else. And I believe that this is that public service message which I would want to give out to everybody, and that is that, ladies and gentlemen, just very recently I've realized that the Allah Almighty, when we speak about our Creator, Alhamdulillah, the most merciful, the most beneficent.
That's true.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a matter of fact, you see, so Allah has created this entire, not just the world, the galaxies and everything in just 6 days, right?
Yes.
That's how it is. So,
Kun fayakun.
So yeah, kun fayakun. So imagine that, if Allah can do this, for billions of galaxies and stars which are out there in just a couple of days, why can't we ask whatever we are asking for everybody else? I think इतनी बड़ी हस्ती से जब हम मांगते हैं, उर्दू में भी कहना चाहूँगा, इतनी बड़ी हस्ती से जब हम मांग रहे हैं, तो सबके लिए मांगे, सिर्फ अपने लिए ना मांगे, अल्लाह मुझे नौकरी दे दे, मेरा रिस्क फराग कर दे, अल्लाह मुझे औलाद बख्श जो नेक हो, जिसके नसीब बहुत अच्छे हों. मुझे लगता है सबके लिए मांगे कि अल्लाह सबको दे, अल्लाह उनको भी दे, हमें भी दे. तो मेरा ख्याल है, I think that's the kind of concept which I wanted to reiterate for everybody. And just very recently, I loved this idea when somebody spoke about it, and alhamdulillah, I'm making sure that whenever I pray for everybody else. So now, even today, I pray that all of you people are doing wonderfully well and that you get whatever you wish for. Ameen summa ameen.
Ameen summa ameen. And that's a very wonderful start to a very spiritual start to a very spiritual Friday. And thank you so much for putting it out very nicely and touching that spiritual aspect of it, because I do feel in a very modern sort of a world, in a very capitalist sort of a world, we are detached from our spiritual self, and that's why you can see there's a lot of suffering in the form of the mental illness. Having said so, Shehzad, I was scrolling through my Instagram as a very addictive sort of a morning routine, and I came across this news that The Crown season 6 has started filming. I do believe that you haven't seen The Crown season, right?
When you talked about it last time, I think I did watch like a couple of episodes on Netflix as well.
Okay.
But I don't know, I didn't really watch the full season.
Okay, you didn't
so
see
I can't act cool, right?
Okay. No. So The Crown has sparked a lot of debate, especially among the media and the Western media and generally around the world, about the role of the monarchy in a very modern republic or in a modern nation-state system. So this season will focus on Prince William and when he met his wife, the future wife, Kate Middleton, in the university, and that is being played by very look-alike sort of the actors. And I think Crown has made sure to put a lot of details into the character building and how this entire set is realized, the palaces, the Balmoral Palace, etc. And I find that very fascinating concept, because how they have infused the reality into the fiction, right? And obviously it has sparked a lot of debate, especially we see that the king's coronation ceremony is around the corner. I think it's happening in the May. I don't know what the specific date it is. But again, we see that there's a lot of resentment against the monarchy or the crown, because people are like that the monarchy represents the darker side of the modernity, and especially we belong to the subcontinent, and we have seen how repressive and oppressive the colonialism was and what was our status back in the old days, and that is why we got that freedom, because we felt that our political agency was repressed. But having said so, I'm really excited for the Crown season 6, and I'm really waiting and watching forward that, and especially the treatment of the Diana at the hands of the royal establishment. It has left a lot of question marks, and especially when this king is now ascending the throne, so it has I think somehow tarnished his reputation and the credibility. But then again, it's a very, very complex sort of a season, and you will find that the human emotions are really repressed in the very institution of monarchy.
Exactly, and thank you so much, for that pre-hype that you've given, for all of those people who might have, watched the earlier seasons of Crown, might be looking forward to it as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, the news is out. Thank you very much, Hajra. And now, since I've mentioned that the news is out, we certainly need to move on towards our top stories as well. So, Hajra, why don't you do the honors?
Okay, so Pakistan has made it categorically clear that its nuclear and missile program is totally secure, foolproof, and under no stress or pressure whatsoever. Prime Minister Office in a statement today said Pakistan's nuclear and missile program is a national asset which is jealously guarded by the state. The statement was issued in the wake of all the recent statements, press releases, queries and various assertions regarding Pakistan's nuclear and missile program being circulated on social and print media. The government said the country's nuclear and missile program continues to fully serve the purpose for which this capability was developed in the first place. And I think, Shahzad, no one can deny that Pakistan is located in a very strategic place, and obviously you cannot change our neighborhood, so it has been always very antagonistic, especially the India, and it has always a very expansionist claims over Pakistan territory, and that is why it's very important to have a strong defense capability, strong nuclear assets, and a strong missile program. And having said so, our missile program, the strike capability is not very long, which shows that we do not have an expansionist design. It's just protective in nature. It's just defensive in nature, and the target lies across the India, not more than that.
Exactly,
right?
and there's no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that the nuclear program of Pakistan is actually going to serve the nation no matter what happens. And since the Prime Minister of Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Mir Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif Sahab, has mentioned it himself, I believe that there's no doubt about it and their capability, because Pakistan has been blessed with the best armed forces all over the world or all over the globe. But now, Haja, there's one more thing which I would want to ask you, and that yesterday, obviously, we did speak about, your visit to Turkey. And unfortunately, obviously, Turkey was actually struck by an earthquake, and there was a lot of disaster amidst that as well. So how do you think that the building back better scheme is going on? How do you think that the people are contributing, and how do you think that they're coming out of this very destructive recent times as well?
This certainly a very unfortunate calamity has struck in the southeastern part of the Turkey, and I think the way the Turkey responded back is really amazing, because number one, a lot of people are saying that the building structure was really great. It was sort of a earthquake proof, and that is why we didn't see that sort of a destruction, because if you can recall back in I think 2005 or 6 when we had the earthquake here, so there was a massive casualty,
but unfortunately, Haja, at this point of time, imagine that the flash floods have killed at least 14 people living in tents and container housing across Turkey's quake-hit region, and several more people were swept away by the rushing water, which turned streets into muddy rivers in areas hit by last month's massive magnitude quake. Turkish officials said the flood killed 12 people in Sanliurfa, and 2 people, including a 1-year-old, also died in nearby Adiman, where 5 remain unaccounted for. The gushing water swept away cars and flooding temporary housing set up for earthquake victims. So a lot of prayers for the people of Turkey, and wherever humanity is under distress, ladies and gentlemen, we make sure that we keep on praying for them, and that may Allah give them ease after a hardship. And Allah promises that there will always be ease after a hardship.
Inna lillahi wa inna ilahi rajiun for all of that calamity, and certainly very well spoke about how the calamity is struck. And I think that is a call from the nature to mend our ways, because obviously because of the climate change, because of our human activity, we have seen that glaciers are melting, which is receding a lot of pressure on the tectonic plates, and that is why there's a lot of movement in the tectonic plates.
Exactly.
And because of this, the earthquakes are happening and these flash floods are happening because there's a climate abnormality, the weather abnormality going on there. So it's a wake-up call for the entire world, because today it's Turkey or Syria, the another day it can be some another country, and I think we've
earlier
seen
it was
that.
Pakistan as well, Haja, and you know, I will always stand by it as well, because imagine that no hardship actually comes from Allah Almighty. I believe that it's always our actions which bring us whatever problem we are in. But now moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, where the magnificent season of HBL PSL 8 is actually taking place. Obviously, just yesterday it was the Eliminator 1, where Islamabad United won the toss and chose to bat on a surface where no team has won while chasing, even though that Islamabad United happens to be one of those teams which are data driven. But unfortunately, I think that rather than having a data analyst, they had a statistician who couldn't really figure them out what to do next. So the final was originally slotted for Sunday, March 19th, with Monday as reserve day, but there are 50 to 60% chance of showers. Although a minimum of 5 overs is required to constitute a complete T20 match, the PCB intend to have a full match, and they are going to great extents for it. Najam Sethi Sahab said that on the basis of available information about bad weather forecast, it is a sensible and proactive approach that we use the off day and play the final on Saturday and utilize Sunday along with Monday as reserve days. There will be no inconvenience to the cricket fans, as tickets purchased for Sunday's match will remain valid for Saturday's rescheduled final. And obviously Sunday was the reserve day, so they're going to keep it that way. But I believe that they might have some up-to-date information, because my iPhone certainly does not show any showers on Saturday. So, but obviously I think that the meteorological department might have been contacted, and they might have said that in Lahore on Saturday it's going to rain, but Allah knows better.
Obviously, Allah knows better. Now, having said so, it's already raining in Islamabad. So, Shahzad, recently I think we have talked about this a lot of time in our program, about how there is a debate and narrative around inclusivity and diversity, and making sure people who are differently able are also added to the mainstream society, and they not feel left out, because obviously they are as gifted as we are, right? And I think every individual is unique in its own sense. It has its own unique gifts and capabilities, and that individual should be judged or valued based on its own worth, right? And which is different for everybody out there. But obviously you've been to UK, and I think also I've also been to London, and we've seen that how their infrastructure is very inclusive, especially for differently able people, their public infrastructure, their trams, their metros, and then they make sure that they give that sort of protective environment to the differently able people. And here in Pakistan, our state is also striving for people who are differently able to be more included and more diversified and more included. But having said so, I think we have a lot to achieve in this regard.
And thank you so much, Haja, for mentioning that, because, you know, I keep on reminding people that, you know, we're way behind when we talk about inclusivity. You know, even when we talk about equality or equity, I think that's something that we were still on track, alhamdulillah. But when we talk about inclusivity, imagine that, you know, since you mentioned about UK, I've seen it for myself that people who, God forbid, are people living with disabilities can actually live their life on their own. You know, they're not dependent on anybody. So imagine if this gentleman or lady is going to be on their wheelchair, they go to the metro station, the metro bus arrives and it lowers itself down, so that, and then the driver comes out, makes sure that he's going to put the chair and fix it inside, and wherever sorry, the gentleman or the lady needs to drop, they will drop them off, and that too with a lot of respect. Over here, unfortunately, when we speak about the infrastructure, I've seen a lot of people and organizations, because it is mandatory by the government that we really need to have infrastructure which is inclusive, they would put up ramps which are as you know, steepy or as slopey as you know, probably 60 degrees centigrade, where you're like, hey, you know what, leave the chair, the person on the wheelchair, but how do you think anybody else could have even pushed it? You know, so I think people really need to be more considerate. People really need to make sure that, you know, that we give equal opportunity to people who are even living with disabilities. But now imagine that we actually have a hero over here inside the studios who, first of all, is visually impaired. He's a person living with disability, but that never stopped him. Imagine, first up, ladies and gentlemen, he happens to be the first ever visually impaired anchor person over here in Pakistan. Not just that, he was just recently featured in the PSL Heroes as well, and he got an award. You know, imagine that this gentleman is making sure that in the University of Bahawalpur, the first ever accessibility center is being built, and he's the director. for that center. So to talk about it, how the stigmatization has actually kind of pulled his leg, or do you think that he's actually become more stronger to do things which he might have thought that were difficulties while he was growing up? Ladies and gentlemen, we're very lucky that we have been joined by somebody who happens to be the first ever visually impaired anchor person from Pakistan. He is Mr. Zain Khan. Hello Zain, assalamu alaikum. How are you feeling today?
Walaikum assalam, and thank you so much for having me today.
It's
And
an honor
thanks.
for us to have you over here, for heroes like you, who actually go all over the world, inspire a lot of people, bring back a lot of good name for Pakistan. So first up, Zain, were you born with this condition, or did you develop it later on? And then, how was life for you early on? Let's speak about your childhood first.
Yes, for sure. When I was born, I had two bad news. Maybe my family had two bad news. First of all, I lost my father just prior to my birth, 2-3 months ago. And then the second bad news was that I could not see. I was partially blind.
Okay.
I could see around 5 to 6% maybe maximum.
That's it.
So when I grow up, the disability or maybe the impairment continues to be severe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, when you obviously, kind of got into your senses, you were growing up, what were the challenges that you had to come across, that you had to face? And then, obviously those challenges made you who you are today, right? You never backed down. You always made sure that I'm going to strive stronger and harder every single day and make sure that I'm going to overcome all of those challenges which will be in front of me.
There are various types of challenges as a blind kid or as a visually impaired kid in our society. First of all, we have to acknowledge that as you people were talking, that we are far behind the accessible maybe structure in our country.
True.
We are working on that. That is the issue. And the second, which is the biggest issue in our society, is, to be very honest, their social behaviors towards people with disabilities or
True.
having these sort of deficiencies, because they see with their own exposure or their own preconceived notions and perceptions. So there is a lot of room to work on, because the social behaviors hurt the family of that kid and that person himself. So my mother, being a single mother, being a only guardian to my family, faced a lot of issues regarding my disability. And like, she had a kid who could not see. She had to move on from another city to another city to a bigger city for my education. So these sort of challenges, the behaviors of people and lack of facilities in our smaller cities, these were two main issues. Maybe.
So what do you think a person would require, a bigger heart or a stronger faith?
Yeah. Actually, when you are having this sort of deficiencies, then Allah gives you much more stronger heart and maybe brain as well. Whatever I have achieved, if I think now, if I was a kind of normal person, I could see, maybe I would not sit here right now. So Allah compensates you with lot of other abilities.
Exactly, and
and
I've
capabilities.
always witnessed that. I know, Hajar, that you have a question, but very quickly, there's one thing
used
which
to
I've
it.
always witnessed, whenever I've been working with people who are specially abled, and that is that imagine that I believe that if there's this one ability which they might not have, and we people, we are the ignorant ones, we do not see it as normal. I have seen that Allah has actually blessed them with another ability which might be better than anybody else in this.
And adding to this conversation, Shahzad, because there's a lot of conversation around inclusivity and diversity, right? And we have seen that how actually there's a special focus given to, especially in the advanced and the developed countries, but I think this is also happening in Pakistan, because when I was going to the airport, I could see that there were two old age people and they were on the wheelchair, and actually the Civil Aviation Authority person came in. They were affiliated with the airport, and they were, taking them to and forth from the boarding passes to that entire, what do you call, the airport
Travel lounge,
infrastructure.
yes.
Yes. So I do feel, yes, there's a lot of attention, but I had a friend, she is a visually impaired, and she used to get offended a lot when we would give a lot of attention. And she said that I'm as normal as you are. So when you deal me with this, victimhood sort of a mentality, I'm really offended, because she was really good in the studies. And I remember we used to gather around her, and she used to teach us a lot. And she's a gold medalist, and now she's doing PhD in the Germany, right? So sometimes do you feel that there's a lot of undue attention towards people who are differently able that might be oppressive, although people do not have that sort of attention, but I mean unintentionally they might say something with lot of attention that might not feel very great for the people who are
feel karate.
Yes,
you very rightly pointed out. You can say we need equality, but we don't need your sympathies.
Exactly.
You can say we need empathy, but we don't need any sort of sympathy. As Shahzad Sahab said, that bichargi, bichara cannot do anything, needs more help. No, it's not right. We need equality, equity, and we need something that your mind accepts that I am the person who can perform as you people can perform. That's it.
Exactly. And Zan, with that, there's one simple question, okay? And that is that imagine that obviously the Nia is always judged by Allah Almighty, right? That's how it is. Unfortunately, sorry. But imagine now, what I'm going to ask you is that I want to sort it out for once and ever. And that is that imagine that anybody, if they're going to show sympathy, it's because of the fact that the way they have been brought up, right? People might get emotional, people might feel the pain. And obviously there are a lot of challenges which you would have come across over the span of your life. And people, when they kind of are in conversation with people who are differently able, they might even feel their pain, and when they feel their pain, there's this sympathy. So they're not victimizing, they're not pinpointing, but they're just sharing the pain that you've lived for or the pain you've suffered from. So why do you think that people who are specially abled would actually feel or take it as a negative connotation to the conversation?
There are two sort of people in our society.
एक चस्का लगा रहे होते हैं,
एक ऐसे होते हैं जो कि आपको बहुत ही कमतर समझते हैं, who think that this person cannot do anything.
Okay.
The other type of people is more dangerous maybe. They think they are angels, they cannot do anything bad, they cannot do mistakes. They say कि यार मेरे लिए दुआ करना, आपकी दुआ कबूल हो जाएगी.
Okay.
Obviously आपकी भी होगी, not just only mine.
Exactly.
So,
thank you very much for saying that.
Two extremes. These are two extremes. And I'm very sorry to say one other thing. In our rural areas, if a blind person takes birth,
there are a lot of stories and myths and whatnot.
The family thinks now this is the person जो कि हमारी आने वाली 7 नस्लों को बख्शवाएगा, इसको हाफिज साहब बना दो.
True.
Okay, that is all right, but give him education as well. Nowadays I think the awareness is enhancing, but this is existing in our society.
Exactly.
And obviously, having said so, Zan, so since you landed in the position of the anchor person, and I think we had some interesting conversation before the start of this program. So how did you landed up in this position? Why not some other profession? Do you want to recount your life journey with regards to your profession as an anchor person?
When I was a school going kid, maybe some of my teachers pointed out that to some extent, this is their kindness or niceness, they pointed out that maybe I can speak well on stage.
And
I used to host some ceremonies in my school, so they had a plan to send me to the radio programs which were designed for the kids. I used to appear there as a guest, and when I was in my intermediate, I had a class fellow who was hosting a show on a local FM station. He insisted me to go to the auditions. I said no, I think they will not give me any sort of chance because of their preconceived perceptions about blind people. This is okay that they gave chance to me as a guest. But when he insisted me and talked to the stakeholders there, I went for the audition, and I don't know, luckily I got selected.
Wonderful.
So that was the, you can say, time when I seriously thought that I should adopt this profession for the entire life maybe. So that was the time when I thought that yes, maybe I can speak.
And did you enjoy it?
Yes, I enjoyed a lot, and Alhamdulillah, my show went very well.
Right.
First of all, the stakeholders were very afraid because when you are hosting a show on radio, you have to control your console, you have to operate your system, and you
Sure.
have to maintain the level of sound and everything.
Yes.
So they were afraid when I performed, and my show went very well. So then they gave me liberty, and then I opted my subject as a journalism, and I went to Punjab University for my BS, and then I went for
Wow.
my
And it's just great. And we would certainly want to congratulate the
Yes.
people at the, I think that you've been working
Yes.
for Urdu, right?
Yeah, I've been working for Urdu Point as well for 3 years, and because before me there was no person who had been hosting a show on camera.
So
There
which is why Zan, I'm very sorry, but this
Yeah.
is what we are going to do. So for everybody who's out there in 46 different countries, we're going to request Zan to be the anchor person today, and we will pretend to be guests as well. So let's see what Zan has to ask. Okay, we'll give you another 5 minutes to go ahead, ask whatever you want to do as an anchor person. If you want to take a starting note, take a starting note, introduce me, Shahzad and Hajra, do whatever. Go ahead, your 5 minutes start now.
Here is my camera.
Yes?
Yes.
So the ladies and gentlemen, today I'm host for next 5 minutes, and I have 2 brilliant and very talented hosts with me who used to host this show, but I'll ask their questions because they put the other people in difficulty. Now I'll try to do the same. So first of all,
Wonderful.
Sir Shahzad,
Ji sir.
how do you think that you thought that you will host this show,
Yeah.
and what was the journey becoming host of PTV World? How do you think that how you landed up here?
I think I believe it's a wonderful question, and it's
Yeah.
because of the fact that imagine that I started my career
Be-
with
as a compliment, you sound like a English teacher as well. So
Thank you
how
so
a
much.
teacher becomes a host?
Thank you so much. All right, so continuing with that, so I started my journey with a private channel, one of the biggest satellite networks over in Pakistan. I was lucky enough,
Sir.
and then when I got to know that the PTV is actually going to open up a newer channel, which is going to be for the English audiences as well. So I was really interested, and I was like that there should be younger representation of the people of Pakistan, and even at PTV World now, for all of those people who've been following the journey of PTV World for more than 10 years now, we've always kind of have had that trust on the people or the younger generations of Pakistan, and for all of our anchors, other than the few prime time shows at night, the political shows, I think all of those people are the youngsters which truly need to represent. So I thought that it was a great opportunity for me to have that diversification in my career, where from Urdu, Punjabi, street
Yeah.
shows, I
Yeah.
would all of a sudden hired for an English news channel, and it definitely did give me a lot of help and boost in reshaping the image I wanted for Pakistan and for myself, and I'm still till date thankful to Allah Almighty for providing me an opportunity
Yeah.
to work in this institute.
It also seems that you have been hosting a radio show also.
Alhamdulillah.
So Hajra, same question to you.
Okay, so I landed up in the PTV back, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and I've always interested in the news reading and the political affairs, international affairs, and that is why I chose journalism. So I was a news anchor, and then I joined this show because there was an opportunity here. But I think I'm really glad to be part of this show because as a news anchor, as a program anchor at PTV, we strive to bring quality content to the fore,
Yeah.
and we do not believe in sensationalism, and these are the values that I hold really dear. And I think Shahzad and I can say with so much pride that we are precursors of one of the greatest organization in the Pakistan, because PTV has always produced quality content. I think people are very reminiscent of the old days when the PTV dramas used to be there and how the streets would empty out because there was so much conversation regarding that, right?
The golden era of
Yeah.
PTV. But now,
Yes.
thank you
Yeah.
so much. I think, Zain, you've done a great job. Very quickly, because you're here to interview for the interview as well. So there's
Thank
one more thing which I would want to ask, and
Yes,
that is that you happen to be the first visually impaired anchor person. Mashallah, congratulations. You've done a great job. But now you happen to be the first ever gentleman over here in Pakistan who actually thought of an idea that within the premises that you've been living, because you were studying at Bahawalpur University, you thought that, okay, there needs to be an accessibility and a facilitation center being built for the people, living with disabilities. How do you think that you came up with this idea in the first place? How was it received by the board of the university? And now do you think that it's going to work out very fine for people who are living with disability?
I have been studying in this country since my childhood, and
Mashallah.
I have been studying in a very large public university for 7 years.
MashaAllah.
The things I pointed out and I noted down, the difficulties I faced during my degree regarding accessibility, regarding syllabus, regarding behavior of people, and the problems on the administrative end.
Yeah.
So I had an idea in my mind that whenever I'll get chance, because I was doing the advocacy through my programs and through my motivational sessions maybe.
MashaAllah.
But practically I had an idea that I'll build an accessibility center or a facilitation center whenever I'll get chance. So a very fine day I got an invitation from Islamia University of Bahawalpur, because I was living those days in Lahore. I based from Bahawalpur actually.
MashaAllah.
So I had to go for the interview of Verdi Vice Chancellor Dr. Athar Mehboob Saab. So I had a very good interview with him, almost unstoppable interview that was. So at the end of the conversation, he complimented me that you are a very good anchor, you came up with very rightly
Pertinent
pointed out
questions,
questions. So I requested him to give me 5 more minutes exclusively. So I pitched my idea that I want to do and execute this idea, because I have been going to some other countries as well, to some European countries.
And you've done some certifications from there,
Yes, I'm a foreign qualified trainer as well from Sweden.
right? MashaAllah.
So the facilities I compared in Sweden, so I had some proofs of that as well. So I pitched an idea. The Verdi Vice Chancellor Saab said that you just give this thing to my team and me in writing. I prepared a very good proposal and I forwarded to them. So very surprisingly, they called me and they said that yes, we want to do this, and they got it approved by the syndicate committee. And I got appointed almost 6 months back. So I'm appointed there as a director of accessibility center.
MashaAllah.
Yes, please.
Yes, so sorry, continue.
The purpose of this center is because it's first of its kind in Pakistan. Some other centers are running, but this idea is little bit different from them.
Okay.
We want to work on several things parallel, like when a student enters the university and takes admission and he passes out from the university, the all aspects of accessibility, all aspects of financial aid, all aspects of skill enhancement, and their you can say other participation.
All sorts of facilitation.
Yes,
basically.
yes. We are covering all the things, including sports as well.
MashaAllah.
So that is in process, and inshallah it would
Inshallah. And I think before we wrap up our segment, one last question, because obviously we talked about there's a lot of conversations on mainstreaming people who are differently abled, and obviously in Pakistan I do see the infrastructure which is becoming more accessible, because I pointed out the 2 instances. But obviously since you are someone who is affected by these infrastructure, so what needs to be done, I mean, in order to have a more accessible sort of an infrastructure there? Because I do feel we have started the conversation, but where that conversation is leading, what needs to be done, quickly before we wrap up.
Yes, please. Because there is lot of room to be improved in regard with our structural accessibility. As you were saying that
We do have quotas, right?
Yes, we have quotas, but there are a lot of problems maybe in some implementations in private sector. Government sector is very efficiently doing that, because
Yes.
Government only cannot do all the things.
True.
The private sector needs to be more inclusive and diversified as well. So coming towards the structural accessibility, we need to ensure the structure to the European level, maybe on our stations, bus stations, airports. When I land on the airport, surprisingly, one thing happens: the guy who comes for the assistance, he takes wheelchair for me. I say, listen, I have my legs, alhamdulillah, I can walk, but you have to guide me by holding my hand only, and you have to carry my luggage. So there are some rooms to be improved,
Sensitivity,
and the more importantly, we need to be inclusive by our minds first.
yes.
Exactly, and while you speak about it, obviously, if he or she brought a wheelchair, I think it actually needs to be taken very positively, because imagine that he might actually feel that that while holding the hand, obviously it's going to take him or her a little bit more effort, which they should put in. It's not that they shouldn't, but I think it's more convenient for any helper to actually have them on the wheelchair, so that they can unanimously just guide them through as
No,
well.
maybe
Just
you are
help them.
right, but as a blind person, as
Yeah.
a visually impaired, I don't feel good to sit on wheelchair, because
Yes.
I can walk very efficiently. So
Mashallah.
when I landed in Sweden recently, they knew that on which seat the blind person is sitting.
Wow.
The accessibility person came in, and she very rightly and to the international standards, she guided me towards the.
So we really need to learn from them.
Yeah.
I think the conversation has started, but we need to have the right sort of conversation, because how our worthy guest mentioned that we need to be more sensitive to the different needs of the people who are differently able, obviously, right? So having said this, so I think we would wrap up this segment, and thank you so much for joining us, for having this brilliant conversation, this cross-pollination of
And
the
we are proud of
ideas.
you.
And we are really proud of you, and we wish you best
Lastly,
of luck.
I just want to raise one point.
Sure.
Yes.
And I'm sorry I did not take any sort of, you can say.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. PTV being a government channel, being a state channel, I would really request to the higher management to give chance to the differently abled people. As I'm very thankful to you that you invited me as a guest, but I would love to host some show on PTV, or some other person like me who is capable of these sort of activities. I guess being a state channel, PTV should take a lead and give us chance.
I
And
think
this is
we should
exactly
have
why
also
we
done
actually
that.
gave you an opportunity to host us as well today, and obviously it's
that
the
is so
beginning.
nice of you.
And PTV has always been very inclusive,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen. Imagine that, not just that, even for the deaf, we do have bulletins with the sign language.
Yes.
I
And,
acknowledge
PTV
that. That is a very good
Exactly,
thing.
and PTV
And I
would
think we
always
have
make sure
Muniba
that
Mazari.
that we bring you all of that as well. And Muniba Mazari happens to be
Yes.
one of our leading anchor persons
Yeah, I know.
over here. So
I'm
thank you very
talking
much.
about the visually impaired people also.
Obviously,
Thank you,
when we
thank
talk about specially able, we
Yeah.
talk about everybody,
Yeah,
so we do not leave out anyone else. But thank you very much, Zain,
Thank
for
you so
being
much.
I'm
with us.
very thankful
Lovely
to
to
both
be
of
in
you.
conversation
Thank you
with
so
you. And for people who are out there, ladies and gentlemen, while we talk about inclusivity, while we talk about people who are specially able, we really need to talk about providing our younger generations those facility with which they go to nourish and grow into beings who are special, who can actually deliver. May them be specially able, or may them be normal, as we want to put it. But ladies and gentlemen, the schools really need to kind of make sure that they give them that ample space to play and do whatever the kids want to do, so that they can explore their areas of interest. And that's something which we will be discussing in the next segment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Good morning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you very much for staying tuned. And as mentioned just before the break, and that is that how important the extracurricular activities are. In fact, we have always been an advocate for that. Because while we were growing up, ladies and gentlemen, I played basketball, I played polo, I played cricket. So I played all sorts of games. I was a wonderful swimmer, and so I'm not going to say that I was a wonderful student, but I think that I was always good at sports. What about
Okay,
you, Haja?
wonderful. So I don't think so I was really great at sports, because I was always studying and reading.
Badminton, yeah,
Okay.
probably.
Yeah. I mean, yes, when we were growing up and we were kids, we were mostly into that, what do you call it, the dodge the ball and the pittu garam and
Pittu garam, yeah.
whatever, the step
Kho-kho,
and yes, kho and all
kish.
of these games. But as we were growing up, after I crossed, I think, the 5th grade, so I was lot more engaged into the studies and books and whatnot. But having said so, I think that I realized the importance of extra co-curricular activities when I came to my profession, because obviously studies do help you, but having set of extra sort of polishing skills also help you in your professional lives. Especially I think the debates is very much important if you want to pursue a career being an anchor, because it really helps you a lot. So we really want to talk about how extracurricular activities is really important for the kids, for their mental growth and for also their growth as a student. We are very glad that we have been joined by Hania Imran, who happens to be the student of 7th grade, and she happens to share the same school that I also went once back in the days. So she is belongs to the APS Humayun Road. Assalamu alaikum Hania, and welcome to our show.
Walaikum assalam.
And thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful to have you. This is for the very first time in my life that I can see children advocating for extracurricular activity. Why do you think in the first place you thought that this is something you would want to talk about on television?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to your show. And I think co-curricular activities are a really important part of every student's life.
Yes.
They're really important for your physical and mental growth. And I think except from studies, we should also take part in those activities which relax our mind and freshen us up.
Wow,
And
that's
what sort
wonderful.
of co-curricular activities your school undertakes and which you are particularly interested in?
Well, our school has a lot of co-curricular activities. There are clubs made for students to encourage the participants of students into extra co-curricular activities.
Yep.
For example, cooking club,
Okay.
sports club, basketball club, Kirit and Nath club, and I have taken part in the Kirit and Nath club and the cooking club.
Wow, that's wonderful. So that means that you're good at Kirat and Nath, right?
Yes.
So we're going to request you that, but towards the end of the program. But imagine that, for us to kind of talk about how important you rightfully mentioned that it's going to nourish you, it's going to give you that discipline in life, and it's
Yes.
beautiful. So which sports are you always interested in? Because now that's not what the problem is. The problem is that imagine that if we are to talk about cricket, if we are to talk about football, if we are to talk about basketball, majority of the schools within the Twin Cities do not have that facility or infrastructure where they're providing their children with such facilities.
Exactly. But talking about my school personally, it has a really big basketball ground and a badminton ground, and I'm really interested in badminton, and I always play it with my friends.
Wow, that's wonderful, and that's exactly one thing which now I realize that imagine. So I went to Beria College, so
I know that very
so,
well.
so it's a school by the Navy, Pakistan Navy as well. We talk about Army Public School. Obviously, it's a school governed by the
Army,
one of the finest institutions over here in Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen. And that is the Army, Pakistan Army. And if you talk about PAF, so obviously there's this PAF school as well, which is governed by the Pakistan Air Force. And I see that that with all of these armed forces schools, we do get a lot of space, and they always consider that how important extra co-curricular activities are.
Yes.
All of a sudden, you go to Beacon House, a few branches are huge. A few
Yes.
branches will obviously provide you this opportunity, but a few branches are just in a house. You talk about Roots Millennium or Roots any of sort of school. A few branches will have parks and grounds and whatnot, but a few branches are just inside a
Exactly.
5-bedroom or 10-bedroom house. Ladies
Yes.
and gentlemen, I believe that that's where the difference is. So imagine that even in our heads, we might know that private schooling is something that we would want to send our child to. But imagine that the facilities are provided in schools which are way cheaper than the private schools.
And talking about the facilities, so where are your daughters going right now?
Okay, yeah, that's wonderful. And it's a wonderful question, Hajra. It's
Okay.
because that because I've always been an advocate of sports, and I've learned quite a lot. All my friendships are because of the sports as well.
Yes.
And that is one thing that which me and my wife discussed, that okay, if I would want to send my daughter to any school, I would want them to have parks and basketball courts and whatnot. So imagine that the school which my daughters go to is Roots. First of all,
Okay.
it's in E11. It has an indoor playing area, and then it has an outdoor playing area as well,
Wonderful.
where there are basketball courts. There's a mini football court, not very huge, but obviously it does provide them with an opportunity to play. And then what they do is that almost once or twice a month they
Okay.
book this Shalimar cricket ground, take all the children over there, do
wonderful.
the sports and whatnot. So I think that they've contributed. Now my daughter is doing I think it's
Karate,
karate.
yes.
There's another name for it too as well. I don't know what it is.
Yes, yes.
They keep on sharing it with me, but I still cannot remember. I
Yes.
think one obviously it's karate, the other one there's another martial arts. Yes,
Martial
that's how you put it. So how do you think that extra co-curricular activities have actually made your personality more better than the way it was previously?
Well, previously I used to study in Beacon House, and over there were co-curricular activities, but not, the one like the thing
You
they
wanted
they're
to
in
do.
APS.
Right.
But once I came to APS, there was a huge variety of extra activities, and I love to take part in extra activities, and I have also won many prizes.
Mashallah.
What sort of prizes? And I do believe that you've participated in some sort of cooking class.
Yes, yes, that's what I was going to tell you. Last year I took part in the cooking class, and 2 or 3 weeks before again, and I won first prize.
Wow, that's
Wonderful.
wonderful. Congratulations. But now there's one more question, and that
Okay.
is the trickiest part. So imagine that even though that we used to study in Beria College, it was a huge campus. We had a lot of grounds where we could do whatever we wanted to do. But they would only give us, sports period twice a week, and that too for
Yes.
only 45 minutes.
Yes.
And I was like, what's the point of having such a bigger facility where you only giving us 45 minutes to play? Don't you think that that's something which the schools really need to kind of focus on? Probably 4 days we can study, and 1 day we can just come and play.
No, exactly. Our school has the sports period once a week for 40 minutes.
That's it?
No, but along with that, we have sports day and clubs, which increase the time for the co-curricular
But
activities.
it's probably because of the fact that the same facility needs to be used by other students as well.
Yes, exactly. We should have a more, I
Yeah.
mean,
I think we should
I
only
think
have sports, that's it.
We need to have more library and games periods, not just once in a week, because we used to have once in a week. I think you are lucky if you had that twice in a
No,
week.
what
so-
you know what we used to do was, what I used to do was that, I was the guy who would go to the PT sir's office
Okay.
and get the basketball, the wickets, or the ball and
Yes,
whatnot.
yes.
So imagine that, once the period was over,
Yes.
everybody would go back to the classroom, and I was the gentleman who was actually supposed to give back everything as well.
Okay.
So I would take another 30 minutes to return all of those things back, so that I could miss
Yes.
that major chunk of the next class, which I thought was boring to me.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's a funny bit of my childhood, ladies and gentlemen, and I keep on sharing that. But that's something which has played an instrumental role. So imagine that now when I wanted to play polo, obviously because I had the basics of riding,
Okay,
it was
wonderful.
easier for me. When I wanted to swim and participate in competitions, just because I had that basic, because we used to go to the naval swimming pool as well.
Oh, wonderful.
And we have had lovely memories over there. They were amazing
Yes.
trainers. People who would teach you, techniques which a lot of people
Wonderful.
might not know. Even people who do a lot of running these days might not even know how to run correctly. So
Okay.
that's something which you pick up on, and you're more efficient with
And-
the kind of energy you're putting in.
I think you develop your confidence in the teamwork because of these activities, and because we indulge in a more sporting activities, because obviously when we talk about the sportsman spirit or sportsmanship, it's about not winning or losing. It's
True.
about having a bigger heart and accepting that obviously game is designed in a way that one party is going to lose and another is going to win, but how you make sure that you look after all of your team members. So this is a very important part, obviously.
And how you share that credit.
Exactly.
I think that's very
That's
important.
very true.
Imagine when you even after the match, if I am in conversation with Babar Azam,
Yes.
so if I'm going to ask him that, it was a lovely day, you scored another fabulous century, you know
Yes.
what he's going to say? He's going to say that it's the team who's actually put in a lot of effort.
Wonderful,
And
wonderful.
when you start to share the credit, ladies and gentlemen, that's when you become the most modest and humble. And that's
Exactly.
what Allah Mighty loves as well. So what about you? How do you think that sports have actually kind of contributed towards you being a more modest and a humble person now?
last week we had a sports day, and our school has divided many kids into houses: faith, discipline, unity, and tolerance.
Yes.
So over there were competition between houses. For example, discipline was playing against tolerance, and unity was playing against, many houses. So we had to accept the failure and accept who wins. So our house won, and the next house, which was playing against her, lost. And they were pretty sad. Many of them were crying, and it was so sad for them. But then our teachers explained to them that no, you have to accept your failure. And we also encouraged them, and I think it's really important to accept your failure.
Exactly.
Try to win.
And there's one more thing which I would want to put it. I've always wanted to put it this way, because imagine that a boy who was growing up, wasn't good at studies,
Yes.
never liked the word failure, right? So imagine I would say that either you win or either you learn, and I think everybody needs to put it
Wonderful.
this way. And thank you so much,
Thank
Bete,
you
for
so
being
much.
with
Thank
us.
you so
Lovely to
much.
be in conversation with you. And even we had houses back
Exactly.
in the school. So the names of the houses I could still remember. So it was Iqbal, Zafar, Jinnah House, and then Tipu House, and I was in Tipu House. What about you?
So I think I shared the same school with her, and we had the same houses: unity, faith, discipline. I think I was the house. What do you call the house captain?
Yes,
of
house
that
captain.
red sort of
Yes,
sash.
yes,
I
yes.
So
forget
you were
that.
so you
Yes.
were that one person who was actually the theta of the class as
Yes,
well, and the
yes,
topper,
yes,
and so
yes.
the topper gets this sash, and they're all around looking after other kids. Okay, तो बाहर घूम रहे क्लास में शिकायत लगाती है उन्हें.
Oh, I was never that shikaiti sort of a kid, but yes, I was the house captain. So having said so, thank you so much, Hania, for being here, for having this wonderful conversation. And until next time, it's a goodbye, Allah Hafiz, and good morning.
Have a great day.